Today we're going to look at the decades between World War I and World War II. We're going to start by looking at kind of a new attitude that came about after World War I and this kind of general post-war pessimism that existed. And one of the best examples of this post-war pessimism is in the so-called lost generation. And the lost generation refers to this generation of writers and poets and thinkers in general that really reflected this kind of disillusionment with Western culture and kind of turned away from ideas of progress. We're going to see a return to a more conservative look at Christianity, and Christian theology kind of had turned away from the ideas of progress as well. And they kind of go back to ideas and older concepts of original sin. We also see this kind of attack on the idea of progress. And going into World War I, most people were excited about progress when they saw what science and progress were doing in society and industrialization. But after World War I, we kind of see a reversal. When people saw what all this new technology did on the battlefields of World War I, a lot of people become disillusioned with progress. We also see some intellectuals become disillusioned with democracy as well. During this interwar period, we're also going to see this intellectual revolution. And we're going to see people like Albert Einstein develop his theory of relativity, basically said that space and time are relative to the person measuring them. And a little bit later, Werner Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. And it kind of went along with Einstein's theory that when you're measuring subatomic particles, you can only speak in probabilities because the simple act of you measuring and observing impacts the results. And so there was no absolutes, only probabilities. Sigmund Freud developed his psychoanalytic theory and kind of tried to find psychological causes for mental illnesses and said that there was kind of this constant conflict between the conscious and unconscious mental processes. We see changes in modern painting. Because photographs could now capture and reproduce things exactly the way they were, we see art become more abstract. There was no reason to paint something exactly the way it was because I could take a photograph and capture it better than I could paint it. And so art becomes more abstract. And one of the best examples of this was Pablo Picasso. Picasso started this Cubist movement where he turned familiar objects into geometric shapes. We also see changes in architecture. We see function become more important than style. And so architecture of this era is going to be very simple. A good example of this is your basic, large, high-rise buildings that you find in cities now. Simple shapes, steel frames with walls of glass. And it was more important that the building serve its function than it look good.